What is the most disturbing thing to know? I work as an anesthesiologist. I've put people to sleep in an emergency situation knowing that they will almost certainly not survive the surgery. These are generally situations where without surgery the patient will not survive, but even with surgery the chances of survival are still small. In most of these instances the patients are too obtunded or aren't conscious enough to be aware of the gravity of their situation, but in a number of instances the patients have been conscious. Talking, although clearly anxious. I try to reassure and tell the person that we won't leave their side. That we will take care of them and that they will be fine. It kind of fucks me up a bit to say this to someone, but I always include the last part because I just don't see the point in telling them the truth. I had one guy tell me he felt like he wasn't going to make it. I told him he would make it but knew he wasn't going to. I put him to sleep knowing that the last human face he would see before he died was mine as he stared up at me as I held an oxygen mask over his mouth and nose. I'd consider myself quite a resilient person, but knowing this stuff is a bit of a load to carry around. That the adults don't know what's going on either. I worked as a palliative carer for about 3 years. I looked after terminally ill people who had chosen to die at home after being discharged from hospital. After a while, you learn some telltale signs that people are deteriorating. After a bit longer, you start to learn how long people generally have left, even down to a few hours. I always went with honesty. I felt it was my job to support the patients' families as well as the patients. So if they asked how long I thought they had left, I would answer honestly, obviously with the disclaimer that I wasn't a doctor and I could only base it on my previous experiences. The wife of one of my patients told me that their children, adults, were visiting the following weekend to say their goodbyes. I had to decide carefully on what to say next, but I ultimately chose to recommend that they visit the following day. At the latest, I regretted saying it because she was devastated. She took my advice and her husband passed away peacefully 48 hours later. After seeing his kids. I'm glad I did it. But upsetting that lady was absolutely gut-wrenching. Some people didn't want to know. And it was their right not to know. That was the worst. In those cases, you had to not say anything. Sometimes they'd say, "See you tomorrow," and I had to reply, "Yes. Have a good night and I'll see you in the morning," knowing full well that they were going to pass in the night. Edit. Wow. Thank you all for your kind words. It is a very difficult but rewarding job. I am no longer a carer. But I often think about whether I would be able to do it again. I've had one question asked a lot in the reply, so I'll answer it here. Death, like life, is different for everybody. Certain conditions will cause the body to deteriorate in different ways. I'm going to spoiler this next bit because it might be too much for some to read. And COPD was a common condition I saw. That was a gradual decline until the patient could no longer breathe and the oxygen just wasn't able to get in anymore. Heart failure was similar. A very drawn-out process. I cared for a lot of cancer patients. Some younger than my parents, which was quite distressing. What tended to happen was the symptoms they already presented would worsen. Beyond the point that their medication could alleviate it. They would lose energy, ultimately being bedbound. The biggest giveaway was when they no longer wanted to drink water. That was usually a 72-hour warning. When they were very close, their skin would start to mottle and go pink-purple. I'm not 100% sure why it happened, but I think it was because the heart was struggling to get the blood around and it would settle. However, generally you could just tell that the person you'd been seeing for days, weeks, months or even years just wasn't the same as they were a few days before. Changes could be gradual or sudden. And I went to work with the philosophy that death comes for everybody. If it were me being cared for, then I would want to be cared for in a certain way. The way I tried to care for everybody whose homes I entered. Early childhood malnutrition, between ages 0 to 5, causes irreversible loss of IQ, 11 to 20 points, and predisposes people to higher levels of violence. Prefrontal cortex doesn't develop the same. And if you miss that window, there's no intervention that can recover the gap. I live in South Africa, highest Gini coefficient in the world. Highest unemployment. Third highest violent crime rate. One of the worst education systems in the world, and it fucking keeps me up at night. I wonder, if we changed nothing except introducing a one nutritious meal per day feeding scheme for ECD, what would happen? It hurts. Edit. Firstly, thank you for the awards, comments, and messages. It is truly touching that you are all as moved by this as I am. I am unable to respond to everything. But I appreciate knowing that so many people have felt and thought strongly enough about this to want to participate in changing it. Secondly, if this has moved you, I encourage you to ask along your networks about ways you can become involved in ECD feeding schemes. Write to relevant congresspeople who oppose such initiatives. There is a lot we can do together as communities. This is a small intervention with such a huge impact. Thirdly, so many of you have asked me for a source. The article one read is here. I read it in 2017 and it has since been put behind a paywall. Although I reverse searched it this year and found it reposted to other sites. The article is written by Dr. Tracy Ledger, a very prominent food security and social and economic reform researcher, whose work is both admirable and important. She is a senior researcher at the Public Affairs Research Institute and the author of a number of publications, articles, and a book titled An Empty Plate: Why We Are Losing the Battle for Our Food System, Why It Matters, and How We Can Win It Back. If you are interested in topics of food and nutritional security and food justice, especially in South Africa, this is a good place to start. I will share in the comments a few articles that I found while doing research, both in 2017 and this year. They are not all from the highest reputable sources, journal publications, but do reference journal publications or interview prominent people from this field. I hope this helps those of you who are looking for more info. Lastly, thank you, and bless all of you, beautiful people. Cruise liners all have a morgue for all the passengers that inevitably die each trip. That this post is going to be a BuzzFeed article in about half a week and there's nothing you can do about it. By the time you show the symptoms of rabies, it's already too late. It can also be dormant for a year before you show those symptoms. Hotels rarely clean their ice machines. That there is anywhere between 25 to 50 active serial killers in the United States, according to the FBI. Edit. Added words. There are spiders that capture bats in South America. The youngest person to ever give birth was 5 years old. Lena Medina. Just think of what happened to the poor girl. That the majority of humans will wait until life-threatening problems become unsolvable before they try to fix them. If we see a life-threatening meteor is going to strike us in a few years, we probably, at least at the moment, couldn't do anything about it. They've had training simulations with this exact scenario, and they only got it right like 10% of the time. They need more like 10 years to reliably and consistently stop it. A dying person's eyes will sometimes go from closed to shooting wide open as they pass. Source: personal observation. Unfortunately. Edit. To clarify, this happened to my father-in-law and I was present. My heart goes out to everyone else who has lost loved ones. Even though the eyes opening was certainly disturbing, being able to have him die at home as he wished and us being there with him at the end was a positive experience that I've made peace with. Thanks for the awards and it's nice discussing with everyone. Prions. They are proteins that make normal proteins in your brain fold abnormally, causing neurological decay and various prion diseases. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is one example. CJD may occur spontaneously, be inherited, or be transmitted by contact with infected tissue, such as during a transplant or from eating contaminated meat. Once this starts, it's 100% fatal. Most often within 1 year. You're dead. No cure. You can kill the prion with several hours of heat at 900 F. This obviously kills the person too. Thankfully it's rare. Less than 1,000 cases per year in the US. Still scares the shit out of me. Edit. I've never met anyone who had this, or anyone with a family member that had this. But so many responses here are sharing their experiences. Thank you for your stories. And I'm sorry for your loss. One of the scariest and most disturbing thing I've watched in the internet is that one guy's slow descent to insanity because its brain lost its ability to sleep. He vlogged regularly until he died. That's one of the most disturbing things I know, that anyone, including myself, can have their last sleep without knowing it. Edit. Ricard Siagyan's channel for those who asked. Edit 2. TL. DW. The guy had a UTI. He didn't have insurance so he took an antibiotic. After 2 weeks, he lost his ability to sleep because of the side effect of that antibiotic. Llama spit is actually projectile vomit. That at some point, you will hang out with a group of close friends for the last time. And not even know it. You'll assume there will be a next time. But that's it. That there are parents out there that willfully sell their children into sex slavery or force them into prostitution. The liver can be ruptured in one punch. Liver is the second most fragile organ in the human body. Edit. Well, fuck, lots of people seem interested. Do with this knowledge as you wish. Edit 2. I'm using fragile to mean susceptibility to damage, not sensitivity. There are about 6 U.S. nuclear weapons that are currently unaccounted for, Broken Arrow, and several times that number missing from Russia. Edit. I'm being told it's technically empty quiver. But Broken Arrow sounds at least 30% cooler, so I'm running with it. A Missouri court famously handled the case of Celia, a slave who killed her owner in 1855 while fighting a sexual assault. In such situations, state law considered any woman to be acting in self-defense. However, the court determined that Celia was not a woman in the sense of the law. She was a slave, and her owner had complete control over her. She was given the death penalty by the court, since she was pregnant. However, her execution was postponed until the child was born, so as not to deprive her owner's successors of their property rights. For another disturbing piece of history, look up the 1918 lynching of Mary Turner in Georgia. A manatee vagina is the most anatomically similar to a human one. They are also thought to be the inspiration for mermaids in folklore. Putting those two facts together makes things really weird and disturbing if you think about it. Fatal insomnia is a thing. I've watched both my parents die in hospice. And unlike what you've seen and heard about, it is not always peaceful. Edit to add. While the hospice staff were wonderful, the positive part of hospice is that everyone who wants to gets to say goodbye. Edit number 2. So many of you are sharing heart-wrenching stories of your loved ones passing. I am just so sorry for your losses and hope that you find comfort and healing in knowing that you are not alone. How many things TSA lets slip through during security tests. You never stop seeing. When your eyes are closed, you're just looking at your eyelids. A brain aneurysm can kill you at any time. A cardiac tamponade is when your heart literally chokes itself to death. If a blood vessel inside the pericardium leaks, a tough membrane protecting the heart's pumping will force blood into the space between itself and the pericardium. As the space fills, the heart can't pump anymore due to a lack of space. It literally drowns in your own blood. The number of people older than you decreases each day, and the number of people younger than you increases each day. That you can have a cancer but you don't know about it. Dolphins' brutality kill baby porpoise for no reason. Deleted. The Nutty Putty Cave accident. Google for full disturbing details, a map of the cave, but basically a guy got stuck caving in a very narrow unmapped tunnel. Upside down, they could not get him out. But almost did. One of the rescuers made eye contact with him apparently, but then their pulley system broke and he fell further down. Unfortunately, he ended up dying of cardiac arrest from being upside down for so long, and they couldn't get him out, never retrieved the body because it was too dangerous for rescuers. Truly so disturbing. I've thought about it probably once a week since I found out about it a few months ago. Edit. Even more disturbing now that someone gave this a wholesome award. Deleted. Sarin gas is one of the worst ways to kill another human being, and we have seen multiple instances where it has been used on innocent people. Whether relaxed or contracting, your muscles need certain signals in order to function. When you flex a muscle, a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine floods the muscle cells, telling them to contract. Your brain eventually tells the muscles to stop contracting, and so that acetylcholine has to be removed. This is done with acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme which breaks it down and allows your muscles to relax. This happens for every movement of every muscle in your body, whether you're flexing your bicep or blinking. Every beat of your heart. Sarin kills because it bonds with acetylcholinesterase, completely changing its structure and rendering the enzyme useless. This means your muscles never relax. They flex harder and harder and harder. Your entire body can cramp your pupils. Everything. The burning gets worse and worse and the pain is unbearable. If enough of it enters the bloodstream, usually via skin, it will lock up your diaphragm and you will asphyxiate. It kills quickly, but I struggle to imagine too many things that would be worse than dying from cramps in muscles you didn't even realize existed. It's not the worst weapon humans have at their disposal. As if you survive a sarin attack, you're likely to make a full recovery, as it doesn't scar lung tissue like other chemical weapons. That being said, it's still classified as a weapon of mass destruction and is supposed to be banned. Adding the wiki for sarin for anyone interested. Scrolled a lot and no one mentioned that a tumor can have teeth and eyes. That is something I will never get over. I'm not sure, but it should be called mesothelioma. Edit. Look below for the corrected name. Edit. It's teratoma. Thanks to everyone remembering me. I think Arthur C. Clarke said it best. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. We enforce retirement ages in many critical fields like medicine and engineering due to scientifically provable cognitive decline. But we also allow people in their 70s and 80s to regularly govern our countries and our lives. Edit. Some of you are stating that there are no legal limits on the age of physicians and engineers. I never said there were laws regarding age limits. In medicine, many hospitals and health organizations have implemented cognitive testing requirements for aging physicians. The physicians are suing for age discrimination. But the change in policies are happening and should be happening. Certified professional engineers are required to go through continuing education and to recertify during their careers, which creates effectively the same check to stop people from practicing when they can no longer practice safely. Making an elderly person repeat, person, woman, man, camera, TV, is not remotely enough of a cognitive test to drive. Let alone run the freaking country. If you're named after your father, your mother has probably moaned your name in bed. For every 1 human cell in your body, scientists estimate there are 1 to 10 non-human cells. Aka lots of little microorganisms living inside you. Babies don't have kneecaps. Deleted. 1/3 of all people who break their hip die within the year. So please tape pillows to your elderly relatives. That slavery is still one of the biggest profiting trades in the world. Polar bears are the only bear species that actively hunt and kill humans for food. There's a rhyme that everyone living where bears live needs to know. And why the rhyme is so important. If it's brown, lie down. Brown or grizzly bears will leave you alone if you play dead. Climbing up a tall tree works with adult brown bears, since they can't climb trees. If it's black, fight back. Black bears will back off when they realize you're more of a threat than they realize. But do not climb a tree to escape. Both cubs and adult black bears can climb trees. If it's white, say good night. Polar bears are not only the largest bears, but they are ambush predators. If one manages to sneak up on you, you're as good as dead. The best you can do to escape is either run and drop your clothes, fortunately for you. They have very short attention spans and they'll stop momentarily to sniff at your clothes because it's not normal for their food to suddenly drop something like that. Or start praying to whatever deity you believe or don't believe in. Edit. This is all advice for if the bear decides to try and kill, eat you. Generally speaking, if you do come across a bear, you never, ever run away. Stand your ground. Make yourself look big and be loud. If the bear stands on its hind legs, it's just checking you out. It's curious and has likely never seen a human before. The best option is to back away slowly while maintaining eye contact. Still being loud. If the bear decides to charge, use an air horn or bear spray, which will likely cause to run off. I would too if I just got maced. However, as a last resort, use a gun or other weapon if it becomes aggressive or starts mauling. There are chicken plants pretending to be rehabs, where prisoners get sent to work as near slaves. At some point your mom set you down and never picked you up again. One aspect of foster care. Some people will take their child to a doctor. Child gets diagnosed with cancer. Child goes to first appointment. Kid gets wheeled back for treatment. Parents then leave, go home, pack and disappear. The kid is in the treatment waiting room, waiting for parents that will never ever come. Sick and facing death alone. It doesn't happen a lot but enough to have processes in place. The worst is when they are like 4, although a 7-year-old was also rough. Edit. Whoa. Lots of comments so ill, try and go through some. Also, it's biological parents that abandon them at the hospital. But foster parents do too. Especially if the first foster parents are relatives that were strongly asked to foster. If an elephant's mate dies, then they can die from broken heart syndrome. Cyanide poisoning is an incredibly painful way to die. Cyanide was what Jonestown consumed for mass suicide. Parents were instructed to give it to their children and convinced the crying was just fear. Edit. For those asking about how cyanide works. If memory serves from when I first read this and listened to the audio recordings, it feels like a massive heart attack. It may not have taken too much time. But any time greater than instant is too long to suffer before death. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.